All right, let's jump right into one of the biggest archaeological cold cases of all time. We're on the hunt for a wonder of the ancient world that seems to have, well, just vanished.
And here's the thing. This is the paradox that has kept historians up at night for centuries. We have these incredibly vivid, detailed accounts from ancient writers. But when we actually go to the site, modern archaeology comes up with absolutely nothing. Not a single brick, not one inscription. It's like they were a ghost.
I mean, think about it. Out of all 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Great Pyramid, the Lighthouse of Alexandria, this is the only one, the single wonder whose actual existence is still a serious debate.
And maybe the most damning clue of all, or lack of a clue I should say, there are exactly zero contemporary Babylonian texts that ever mention the gardens. The guy who supposedly built them, King Nebuchadnezzar II, he wrote about everything, but on this incredible, world-famous achievement, total radio silence.
So what we're left with is a genuine top-tier mystery. And today, we're going to break down the 3 leading theories that try to crack this ancient puzzle.
So our first stop has to be the original witnesses, right? We have to look at the stories that created this whole legend in the first place.
Just try to picture that. This isn't just a garden we're talking about. Diodorus is describing a literal man-made mountain of plants, a green paradise, built to look like a rolling hillside, climbing up into the sky in layers, kind of like a huge theater. It's an absolutely breathtaking image.
And the details just get more and more wild. Other writers talk about these terraces soaring more than 65 feet high, held up by massive stone columns, packed with huge trees and exotic flowers from all over the world, all kept alive in the middle of the desert by this incredible piece of technology, a complex water screw, constantly cranking water up from the Euphrates River all the way to the top. I mean, what a feat of engineering.
So you're probably thinking, okay, those accounts are super specific. If they knew all that, what's the big deal? Well, the problem isn't what they wrote, it's when they wrote it.
Just look at this timeline. The gardens were supposedly built by Nebuchadnezzar way back in the 6th century BCE. But the very first time we see them mentioned in writing is by a Babylonian priest almost 300 years later. And those super lush, detailed descriptions, they come even later than that. And here is the fatal flaw in the testimony. Not a single one of these writers was an actual eyewitness. They were all just repeating stories they'd heard centuries after the fact.
Okay, so with the historical accounts on pretty shaky ground, the investigation turned to hard science, to archaeology. It was time to go to the presumed crime scene, the ancient city of Babylon itself.
For a very, very long time, everyone just assumed the answer had to be here. This was the glorious capital of King Nebuchadnezzar II, one of the most powerful men in the ancient world. If he built a wonder, you'd think this is where you'd find it, right? And believe me, they looked. The most famous search was led by a German archaeologist named Robert Koldewey. His team spent almost 20 years digging up Babylon, and they found incredible things, like the Ishtar Gate. At one point, they stumbled on this really weird vaulted structure with 14 rooms. Koldewey thought, this is it, this has to be the foundation. But nope, it was just another dead end. For one, it was way too far from the river to be watered easily, and later they found tablets right there at the site that confirmed they were just, well, storerooms.
So here's the bottom line. After more than a century of exhaustive digging by team after team, the archaeological verdict is pretty brutal. There is simply no physical evidence that the Hanging Gardens ever existed in Babylon. Period.
Just when it seemed like the case had gone completely cold, a brand new suspect entered the scene, and it turned the whole investigation on its head. This is all thanks to a game-changing theory from Dr. Stephanie Dalley, an Assyriologist at Oxford.
So, Dr. Dalley had this pretty radical idea. What if everyone's been digging in the wrong place for centuries? I mean, just look at the comparison. In Babylon, with King Nebuchadnezzar, we've got no texts, no archaeology, nothing. But if you go 300 miles north to the rival Assyrian capital, Nineveh, and look at a different king, Sennacherib, well, suddenly you find everything. Tons of texts and clear archaeological evidence of massive gardens and the water systems to match.
And this, right here, this is basically the smoking gun. This isn't some second-hand story from hundreds of years later. This is a direct quote from King Sennacherib himself, carved in stone, describing an amazing botanical garden he built. He even calls it a wonder for all peoples and a replica of a mountain. Sound familiar? That's the exact same kind of description the Greek writers used. And we know for a fact he could pull it off. I mean, look at this. This is the incredible system of canals, dams, and a giant aqueduct his engineers built to haul water over 50 kilometers from the mountains. This was one of the greatest engineering projects of the ancient world. It was more than enough to support a giant, lush garden in Nineveh.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. This is the elephant in the room, isn't it? If the gardens were really in Nineveh, built by an Assyrian king, why on earth does everyone call them the Hanging Gardens of Babylon?
Well, the answer seems to be a huge, centuries-long case of mistaken identity. For the ancient Greeks writing these stories, the two great empires of Assyria and Babylonia kind of blurred together over time. In fact, some ancient sources actually called Nineveh Old Babylon. Even the two main rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, got mixed up in the accounts. So it's totally plausible that the story of this amazing Assyrian wonder just got attached to the more famous city of Babylon over the years.
But there is one last theory we have to look at, a much more skeptical one. What if the gardens weren't in Babylon or Nineveh? What if they were never really a single physical place to begin with?
This theory argues that the Hanging Gardens were more of a powerful idea, a literary creation. You see, for Mesopotamian kings, building a huge garden was a massive power move. It showed they could control nature itself. And for Greek and Roman writers, the story of this green paradise in the desert was just irresistible. It was the ultimate tale of exotic Eastern luxury. It could have easily started with a real but much smaller palace garden, and with each retelling, the story just grew bigger and grander until it became the legend we know today.
So after all our digging through ancient texts and modern archaeology, we're left with three really compelling but totally competing solutions to this whole mystery.
Let's just lay it all out one last time. You've got the Babylon theory, which has all those great classical stories going for it, but is completely shot down by the lack of any physical proof. Then you've got the Nineveh theory, which has amazing archaeological and textual evidence on its side, but you have to accept a huge, centuries-long mix-up. And finally, you have the myth theory. It explains why we can't find anything in Babylon, but it kind of struggles to explain why all those ancient stories are so darn consistent.
And so, the case file remains open. And the final verdict? Well, that's up to you. Looking at all the evidence, what do you think? Was the lost wonder in Babylon just waiting to be found? Was it hundreds of miles north in Nineveh, its story stolen by history? Or was it never really a place at all, but a legend just too good not to believe? The mystery continues.